What's going on, guys? We're back again with another benchmark test of Warzone Mobile on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark V with the Xperia Stream attachment. Today we're going to be doing some benchmark tests. We're going to change some of those settings and parameters of the cell phone so that we could try to get better performance as we go along. This is going to allow some of our Xperia, friends out there, people that own the device, or maybe even you have the Xperia 1 Mark VI and you're looking to improve some of your settings on the new device. Well, this benchmark test is definitely for you because we're going to see what this thing can do, right? Now, Warzone is great because you're able to bring over all of your progression from the console/PC game and just kind of continue where you left off, battle pass progression, camos, and whatnot. So we're going to get into some gameplay here, and you're going to see that we're doing our first benchmark test, recording with these current settings you see on the left side of the screen. We are recording at 1080p, 60 frames per second, with the graphics turned up to its max setting at 96 field of view. And we're still consistently getting over 60 frames per second while recording. Now, this is a big deal because we're not using a capture card, we're not connected to a PC, so I'm not always recording when I'm playing. And the difference that I'm noticing even at max settings is about a 10 frame per second difference. So with these particular settings, the way I'm playing, I'm usually hovering more so around 70 to 80 frames per second rather than 60 to 70. So that's something I want to mention right off the bat because, of course, recording from the phone itself uses some of the processing power of the phone to actually capture the footage, and it does a great job at recording the footage, but it does sacrifice some of those frame rates. It definitely brings up the heat in CPU and GPU, and that's what you're seeing right here. Maximum heat, I would say, before the phone starts to have any kind of warnings is probably around 90 degrees Celsius, which is pretty damn hot actually. If you were to convert it to Fahrenheit, it's up there. CPU usage and things like that, of course, that's going to be a little bit higher when you're doing the recording, but I wanted to mention that right out the gate because this is probably more so along the lines of a stress test as far as what the Xperia 1 Mark V can do. And even while we're recording and with the 1080p 60 frames per second with the maximum settings, we're still consistently getting over 60 FPS. This is great. This is exactly what we want to see. So you can easily run Warzone Mobile using the Xperia Stream on a big screen TV, like a 4K TV in the living room. I actually recently used a shuttle bus ride home from Tesla, and they had monitors on the back seat on the two-story bus, and I was able to play Warzone Mobile on the way home from work. It was awesome, using one of the monitors on the bus. Playing in a big screen, of course, means you want to have better visuals, so using high-quality graphics may be a better option for when you go that route. Okay. All right, and for our next test, we're going to take the graphics down to the lower settings. The new update for Warzone actually simplified the graphics settings quite a bit, so you only have lower and higher. We're still going to be recording at 1080p 60 FPS. I believe we pretty much kept the field of view the same, should be right around the same. It's at 95. Now, it's not too much of a difference here between high and low when you're using a smaller screen. But like as I mentioned before, if you decided to use a monitor or a bigger TV, having the higher graphics may be something that you want. Especially if your TV only goes up to 60 FPS, then you're golden, because we just did the stress test and used maximum settings with the 95 field of view, and we still were above 60 frames per second. The only time that you want to consider doing anything more than that is, one, if you're playing directly from the phone itself, or if you're trying to connect to a monitor that goes beyond 60 FPS. Of course, because the phone itself has a 120 hertz screen, and so if you're playing from the phone, you may want to try to maximize the graphics there, right? So keep that in mind when you're tweaking your settings while you're playing the game. Now, I mentioned this on the previous video, but I want to go in more depth about it. The more devices that you have connected to your phone, the more latency there will be between them. What I mean by that is if you're using a DualSense controller or any kind of Bluetooth controller to play the game, it's going to have a pretty good latency by itself. But once you start connecting more things to the phone, such as Bluetooth headphones, for example, or if you're recording on the phone while you're playing the game and using DualShock and using the Bluetooth headset, now you're starting to have more than one thing connected, and there may be a little bit more of a noticeable latency difference. It may be better for you to use a wired headset if you're close enough to the Xperia stream to just go ahead and direct connect it. That may be a better way for you to save on processing power. Everything has a balance, using your screen brightness, whether you're recording, what settings you're recording at. Those are all affecting the frames per second. Now for our last test, what you see here now is that we're actually recording at 720p 120 frames per second, still with the low graphical settings, with the 92 FOV, which is giving us more along the lines of 80 frames per second. Now again, if we are not recording, we're probably going to be getting more about anywhere between 85 to 100 frames per second. And we're just simply playing team deathmatch, right? Sometimes frame rates will vary in different areas when we're playing Warzone, right? Depending on how big the map is, how many characters are on screen, how many players are nearby, that kind of thing. So everything starts to basically change and adjust the frame rate on the fly. And it's very sporadic. It's not super consistent, right? But we're even hitting over 100 frames per second in this test right here. And so what I will say is, if you are going to record on the phone, the absolute best setting, which is one that I haven't tested yet, we're going to do a separate video for that, would probably be 720p 60 frames per second, right? There's no need to go 120 frames per second on the recording in most cases, because you upload it to YouTube, YouTube's going to max it out at 60 anyways. And then the phone itself is playing the game at a resolution that's probably more along the lines of 720p instead of being closer to 1080p, so it's almost a waste of processing power to do so. I just decided to try recording at different resolutions just to get an overall better bitrate on the recordings, but you get the idea. Now this guy just sniped me, so I'm gonna go ahead and chunk this grenade and try to get him back. Check it out. Did not want to let him get away with that spot right there. But yeah, as you see right here, consistent frame rates in the middle of the action, out of the action. I've been playing for a good while by the time we got to this part here, and the CPU and the GPU have held up pretty well. The Xperia stream keeping the temperatures at a reasonable enough level to continue the gameplay, and that's the most important thing, right? Because if you're trying to play games on the phone, last thing that you want is the performance to dip because the phone's getting too hot. With the Xperia stream, that's not an issue. But the issue that I have currently with the Sony Xperia 1 Mark VI is that they don't have an Xperia stream attachment for it just yet. As of right now, the only thing that's going to be your saving grace is their vapor chamber that they claim to have used in the new device, which is supposed to, and this is what their claim is, it's supposed to improve the basically the performance dealing with the heat playing video games, right? So solid gameplay here. You can tell that running with the lower end graphics, still getting really good frame rates while recording. But like I said, I tend to play at the higher graphics, mainly because I'm connecting the Xperia stream to a monitor itself. And that's also because the Xperia stream attachment is too large for any phone mount to be used on the DualSense anyways. And so until I find one that can actually fit from my controller directly to the Xperia stream, I'm probably going to be using the Xperia stream as a mini console to connect to either a 4K TV that's in a living room or any kind of larger screen TV, or just a gaming monitor, right? If I want to push past the 60 frame per second limit, then I'll go ahead and go that route. But the gameplay here, everything seems to be holding up pretty well. Another thing that I've done to improve my frame rates is your standard settings when playing Warzone Mobile. This applies to any cell phone. Is that you want to take everything off the screen that is using processing power, because we're not actually touching the screen. So we don't have to have the built-in screen joystick or any of the buttons like the grenade throw or, shooting or anything like that. We don't have to have them. In fact, there's a setting, if you go to the control settings, I believe if you go pretty much all the way to the right, that's specific for when using a gamepad. Okay, so you want to use that as well, because again, that's just drawing more processing power and it's eating up your frame rates. That's why a lot of times when people try to play Warzone just straight after downloading it, all those things are activated and they're noticing performance dips constantly, right? Having to lower the graphics and all that. Well, with the Xperia Stream, not only are you able to make the most out of using it as a mini console, you even have features on the Game Enhancer app itself that let you lower processing power for touch response. Okay, so you can lower the touch response using the Game Enhancer feature, because those things are not necessary for competition, and that again improves your FPS. So what did we mention? We mentioned the ability to connect to a monitor and to basically take off the brightness of the phone. We've talked about how you're able to improve the FPS by changing the FOV, changing the graphic settings. And then, of course, if you're recording, if you want to record, what are the best settings to use while recording straight from the phone, okay? So this gives you a lot of flexibility. The Xperia 1 is an excellent phone to play Warzone Mobile with. I'm having a blast doing it. So much so that sometimes I prefer to just play the mobile game than play my PS5 version of Call of Duty Warzone, So it's been a lot of fun doing these benchmark tests. And I hope that you guys can take some of these tips and implement them into your devices to get better performance overall. And maybe some of you Xperia fans out there, especially those that are looking at the Xperia 1 Mark 6, may have some things to chime in on if you've had the chance to test it out on there. I'd love to see some benchmark gameplay of the new device, because I'm probably not going to get it, but I know that Gen 3 Snapdragon is going to be a beast when playing this game. If this is any telltale sign of what it can do, we already know that the Mark 6 is going to be an incredible device for Warzone Mobile, as we've seen from some of the footage that's out there already. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to like and subscribe for more. This is Jada09 signing out.